Depending on who you ask, Barry Minkow is either a carpet cleaning company owner, a fraud investigator, or a pastor. And the interesting part is, none of them would be wrong. Barry Minkow was born to a Jewish family in Inglewood, California. He was raised in the Reseda area of the San Fernando Valley. When Barry was only 9 years old, his mother got him a job as a telemarketer with the carpet cleaning business where she worked at the time. A few years down the line, Barry fell in love with the carpet cleaning industry, so much so that he started ZBest at age 16 while he was still a sophomore at Cleveland High School. With as little as 3 employees and 4 phones, Minkow kick-started his company in his parents' garage. At the time he launched his company, Minkow struggled financially. He actually had to depend on his friends to drive him to jobs because he hadn't gotten his driver's license. His business accounts were closed by 2 different banks because the California law at the time didn't permit minors to sign contracts and checks. It was really a difficult time for Minkow, as he always had to face customer complaints and angry suppliers demanding their payments. At times, he found it difficult to pay his staff. As a 16-year-old, he definitely faced a severe lack of capital. So, he took to check kiting, stealing, and selling his grandmother's jewelry. He even went as far as staging break-ins at his offices, and then running up fraudulent credit charges as a way to finance his business. Soon after, Minkow took his fraud a step further by branching into the insurance restoration business. An insurance claims adjuster, Tom Paget, helped young Barry forge numerous documents claiming ZBest was involved in several restoration projects for Paget's company, and thus, the elaborate scheme began. Paget and Minkow went ahead to start a fake company together, and they called it Interstate Appraisal Services. The company was used to verify the details of these restoration claims to Minkow's bankers, and then Barry used this mean to get loans from these banks. The loans obtained were used in the expansion of ZBest across Southern California. The ZBest carpet cleaning division was very much real, and even won high praises for its quality services. But it was only a front for the fraudulent insurance restoration division, which provided 86% of the company's revenues. As if that wasn't enough, Minkow also gathered more money by factoring his accounts receivable for work under contract, as well as floating funds through several banks in an elaborate check kiting scheme. After Barry graduated high school in 1985, he spent all his time working at ZBest, and he put more effort than ever into his other undercover frauds. Although the company had recently expanded, it was still a little short of cash. So, the youngster decided to take a loan from Jack Captain, a Los Angeles businessman who had ties to organized crime. Captain later sued Minkow for not paying him his share of the company's profit. But Minkow claimed Captain was a usurer. By the time Captain died in 1987, the suit was still in court. Minkow had a group of advisors who were also organized crime figures, and this fact greatly upset his employees. One of such advisors was Maurice Rhine, a major shareholder in the company who had been convicted for fraud in 1976. Robert Vigiano, who was a convicted jewel thief and a well-known loan shark, was also Minkow's business partner. By February 1987, Minkow's stake was worth $100 million, while his company was trading at $18 a share on NASDAQ. In total, the company was valued at $280 million. At this point, ZBest now had 1,030 employees and offices in California, Arizona, and Nevada. While these figures sound impressive, the company still had a severe cash flow shortage as a result of paying investors for the fake restoration projects. In the late 1980s, the authorized carpet cleaner for Sears, KeyServe, was being sold to its British partners. Once Minkow got wind of this, he began merger talks with KeyServe. He knew that the cash he would get from a merger would help him solve his company's issues immediately. He also thought that the merger would bring in enough money to help him end the Ponzi scheme sooner and enable him to make the company completely legal. Despite the fact that KeyServe was twice as large as ZBest, both companies agreed to a $25 million deal in which ZBest would be the surviving company. Had the merger been pulled through, ZBest would have become Sears' authorized carpet cleaner, and this would, in turn, make Minkow the president and chairman of the board of the largest independent carpet cleaning company in the United States. Soon after the merger deal was announced, Minkow put his huge dreams into plans. He started to make plans to raise somewhere between $700 to $800 million to enable him to buy ServiceMaster by the means of a hostile takeover. He also planned to expand his company to the United Kingdom. Outside of his carpet cleaning and Ponzi scheme, Minkow had also begun preliminary preparations to buy the Major League Baseball team, the Seattle Mariners. Minkow's downfall came just as the due date for the merger was close. The credit card fraud he used to keep his business alive in the beginning was uncovered. As they say, karma's a bitch. Minkow had earlier pushed the blames on unscrupulous contractors and another employee. They had actually already paid back most of the victims, but he had not completely paid back a homemaker who had been overcharged. When Minkow refused to acknowledge her request to be refunded, she tracked down several other people who had been defrauded by Minkow, and then she took all her findings to the Los Angeles Times. The Times then wrote a story revealing that Minkow had run up to $72,000 in fraudulent credit card charges in 1984 and 1985. The story made it to the papers just a few days before the KeySurf merger would close, causing ZBest's stock to plummet by a whole 28%. Hours after that morning's edition of The Times, ZBest received calls from their banks threatening to collect their loans. Later that day, at a press conference, a reporter exposed that one of Minkow's various cleaning projects, the Sacramento carpet cleaning project, never existed. She also discovered that ZBest did not have the contractor's license required to run large-scale restoration work. To calm investors, Minkow issued a press release touting record profits and revenues, but he did this without notifying Ernst & Winnie, the company responsible for auditing his company, before the KeySurf deal. The press release implied that ZBest had been cleared of any wrongdoings, but of course, this could only briefly stop the decline in stocks. As expected, the KeySurf deal was withdrawn days before it was due to close. Ernst & Winnie later found out that Minkow had issued several checks to assist the validity of the fake contracts. These checks had been written to an associate who later confessed to Ernst & Winnie about the fraud. At first, Minkow claimed not to know who the man was, but after the checks were discovered, he couldn't explain them. Barry knew that his time had come, so he chose to resign for health reasons. He later told one of his board members that the insurance restoration business was all a scam from the onset. ZBest's board carried out an investigation that confirmed the fraud allegations to be true. It sued Minkow, stating that he made away with $23 million in company funds. The company was then forced into Chapter 11 bankruptcy. 2 days later, the ZBest headquarters and Minkow's home were raided by the Los Angeles Police Department. They found evidence that the company had also been used to launder profits for organized crime. Minkow and 10 other ZBest insiders were indicted by the Los Angeles grand jury in January 1988 on 54 counts of racketeering, securities fraud, money laundering, embezzlement, mail fraud, tax evasion, and bank fraud. Minkow was also accused of setting up dummy companies, writing phony invoices, and conducting tours of supposed restoration sites. Minkow confessed to manipulating the company's stocks. He claimed he had no choice but to resort to Ponzi schemes because he was being pressured by organized crime figures who secretly controlled his company. The story itself sounds pretty believable, but given the context of who was telling it, it was pretty hard to believe. On December 14th, 1988, Minkow was found guilty on all charges. On March 27, 1989, he was sentenced to 25 years in prison. He was placed on a 5-year probation and was to pay $26 million in restitution. He was described as a man without a conscience by the U.S. District Court Judge Dekran Tevrizan. He was also banned from ever serving as an officer or director of a public company again. One would think this was the end of the story, but did Barry Minkow end it here? Nope. During his time in prison, Minkow became, or claimed to have become, a born-again Christian and was involved in Christian ministry. As a result, he was released early from prison in 1995. Upon his release, he went to work as a pastor of evangelism at the Church of Rocky Place in Chatsworth, California. He also became a director of the church's Bible Institute. That same year, he wrote his first book about the ZBest scam, monikered Clean Sweep. In 1997, Minkow helped a church member uncover a firm with a $300 million Ponzi scheme and reported it to the authorities. This was the beginning of the Fraud Discovery Institute, a for-profit investigative firm founded by Minkow. At this point, you'd think he had turned a new leaf, but unfortunately, I gotta break it to you that the firm was also another fraud cooked up by Barry Minkow. His fame as a fraud investigator spread fast. He soon attracted the attention of the Wall Street Journal, the Bloomberg News, and others as a fraud expert. He even gained national attention in August 2006, when 60 Minutes aired a profile on him. Several Wall Street investigators paid him a lot of money to continue his work. Minkow claimed he had uncovered $1 billion worth of fraud over the years. In 2011, Minkow struck again. He admitted that he had deliberately helped to bring down the stock price of home builder Lennar. He had earlier issued a report accusing Lennar of massive fraud. He claimed that the irregularities of Lennar's off-balance sheet debt accounting was proof that the company was running a massive Ponzi scheme. These claims were later discovered to be lies after hundreds of millions of dollars had been put into exposing Minkow. As if he hadn't done enough, Minkow also used his position as a pastor to swindle people. In June 2011, members of Minkow's former church were interviewed, and they said he had in one way or another dubiously taken money from them. One woman said he had asked her for $300,000, for which he claimed was to help finance a movie about his redemption. In January 2014, Minkow pleaded guilty to 1 count each of conspiracy to commit bank fraud, wire fraud, mail fraud, and defrauding the government. He admitted to embezzling $3 million in community Bible donations from 2001 to 2011. On April 28, 2014, Judge Michael Aneo sentenced Minkow to another 5 years in prison. As a result of his crimes, Barry is to pay a sum of $612 million in restitution, and unless he somehow cooks up another elaborate scheme, it's safe to say he'll never be able to afford it. And with that, we've come to the end of the video. We hope this makes you aware of the fact that fraudsters are all around us, and we should be continuously vigilant about them. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more exciting stories.